Happy Tuesday evening. Hope that the shortened week has gotten off to a good start for you. Did the swimming video in Shaver Lake a little bit earlier today, and now it's just about passing time before yet another open 49ers OTA practice that's coming on Wednesday at about 12:20 p.m. So go ahead and like the channel, subscribe to the channel. Of course, you're going to get some video footage from that practice, more analysis. That's just the drill around here, and I appreciate your support. Today, this evening, I'm going to talk about a topic that I've been getting a lot of questions about. Trey Lance's throwing motion, his release. Has anything changed over the course of the several months since we last saw Trey Lance? Obviously, with the wrench of his finger injury, the chipped finger thrown in there, that he played through the 2021 season. And the answer to that question, if I want to answer briefly, is yes. There has been a change. Trey Lance has tightened up his release, and it's cool because so many people are scrutinizing this through every which angle. We have the technology now to scrutinize it through every which angle. People can take Trey Lance's OTA footage from a handheld iPhone camera from my video from practice, and they could apply some of this biometric data to it. They could biomechanic data, I guess I should say. It's not biometric data. They could apply some of the biomechanical measures to it, and they could say, yes, his throwing motion is similar, but his release has tightened up. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, because we've seen this graph on Twitter from Quinn McLean, who's a data analyst, and he's using some of this video data, and I'll make this bigger on the screen for you. You can see that they're tracking what Trey Lance's body, where his elbow position is, how quick his release is, what the throwing motion is, just through simple OTA footage. So there's a simple Trey Lance throw from practice last week. And Quinn McLean has now posted the throwing motion and the release on an XY axis. So Lance, I'm going to try to explain this in layman's terms. This obviously isn't my exact area of expertise either. This is all biomechanical stuff that a quarterback guru like Tom House has applied in his work with Drew Brees, Tom Brady, most of the NFL, and he's also worked with Trey Lance. But the fact that Lance's release has tightened up shouldn't be confused with a massive change in his throwing motion. But the key is that Lance's release is indeed tighter, at least in practice. So how do we read this graph? Well, I'll make this a little bit bigger for you to check out. But if you look at the x-axis, that is the elbow angle. And if you look at the red, that's Trey Lance's pro day when he was still with North Dakota State before the 49ers drafted him. And the gold is the data gleaned from the video at OTAs last week. You'll see that last year at pro day, if you go along the x-axis, which is horizontal, you'll see the initial throw, and then you'll see this big hitch where Trey Lance had that kind of like double hitch, right? During his release that elongated everything, right? So the double hitch is essentially gone, or it's much smaller. It's much more fluid here in the x-axis taken from the second sample. Now, if you look at the y-axis, that's vertical, that is overall shoulder density or the overall track of motion. So this will be a better measure of Trey Lance's throwing motion. You could see it goes all the way up to nearly 0.008 in the red one. That's from his pro day last year. And it goes up to a little bit above 0.008, but still a relatively negligible difference in the y-axis. So the summary, if we want to look at it this way, is Trey Lance's throwing motion remains similar, but his release has tightened up because that elbow angle, that second little bump, is nowhere near as profound in the second graph. I have video from Trey Lance's work at practice last week right now that we could take a look at again. This is the towel drill. Now, we talk about Trey Lance working with QB throwing mechanic guru Tom House. The towel drill is one of Tom House's specialties. Gets that elbow in line, gets a quarterback throwing that football properly because he's just working with the towel instead. It's supposed to feel funny because it's a drill. And here you have Trey Lance throwing the football. Maybe tomorrow out of practice, I get a few more videos so you can judge to see for yourself how that release might be a little bit more tight and might be a little different than it was last season. But this is the summary. And then this is the key. Can Trey Lance carry this over from practice to game action where habits can revert. Tom House talks a lot about 10,000 throws needed for a young quarterback to really hammer home a new habit. And obviously, Trey Lance came out of college extremely raw, only 318 passes in a game at North Dakota State. And, this is key. This is all part of what moldable clay is. Moldable clay was the big term that I used when I said the 49ers should draft Trey Lance last season, and why I thought they would draft him, because I thought that Kyle Shanahan would want somebody with a really high physical upside, but was like moldable clay that he could take and he could mold into the quarterback that he envisions for his system. So with so little experience for Trey Lance coming into the NFL, you could see market improvements. Whereas with Drew Brees and Tom Brady working with Tom House, they're trying to get from 92% efficiency to like 95% efficiency when you look at the biomechanics of the throwing in one off season. Somebody like Trey Lance probably is trying to get from 75% efficiency to 88% efficiency. And you already see in the whole tightening of the throwing motion, as we see in this graph, that at least in practice, Trey Lance has been able to accomplish the tightening that you would want, at least to begin. So the 49ers can mold Lance into what they want, assuming that he follows the prescription, right? Assuming that he follows the work that needs to be done. And you can scientifically look at some of this stuff now. And I think the early returns are that some of this stuff Trey Lance has indeed improved. But the key remains, can he carry this over into a game? And that's something that won't be really determined until 3 or 4 months from now, maybe in the preseason, maybe in camp. We'll see that. When live bullets are flying, when you have that pass rush coming after you, things are obviously different, and you hope that you don't revert back to old habit. But I think that one thing that was clear last year is that Trey Lance needed to tighten up the release. It's going to be really important for the 49ers. Quick passing game. Everything in that quick passing game is based on rhythm. It's based on timing. It's based on in a larger scheme of things, it's based on avoiding an interior pass rush that has been strong against the 49ers because their interior pass blocking hasn't been great. And for that, you have to get rid of the ball quickly. For that, things have to be snappy. That obviously is something that Jimmy Garoppolo is really good at. And it probably was the weakness of Trey Lance's game coming out of college. He had the big arm, he had the cannon, he had the ability to run, he had the ability to escape some of these pass rushes. But as far as the quick timing game, staying accurate, having that elbow in correct position so that he could avoid passes that were either too high or too low. I know that he missed in both regards last year. That all comes down to the mechanics, to the fundamentals of the release, and to the base and to the setup. And that's something that we're going to keep a very close eye on as we watch Trey Lance this year. I thought that, it was really hard to critique Trey Lance properly last season because we don't know how, badly that chipped finger hurt him over the course of the year. He mentioned that it was crooked during his press conference last week. So obviously there was some sort of effect there. So we can go back and look at the pro day. We can go back and look at training camp and the preseason before the injury happened against the Raiders in week 3 of the preseason. And then we could look at the games against the Seahawks and the Cardinals and the Texans, but we have to keep everything analyzed with a grain of salt because that finger injury did happen. So he sailed an interception against the Arizona Cardinals in week 4 on his very first drive, but could that be blamed on the finger injury? Because he probably had to compensate in some way with the throwing motion and the release there. So it's really, really hard to tell. Still, the goal is to become consistent. The goal is to become accurate. And that's why we look at our first piece of data right here. And it looks like Trey Lance has tightened up the throwing motion. And that is a good thing for the 49ers. As far as accuracy goes in practice, he completed 16 of 18 and 7-on-7 ball essentially last week. It's going to be really hard to get an accurate gauge until the 49ers play legitimate 11-on-11 football in training camp, because the 7-on-7 stuff is skewed toward the offense. It's a passing league kind of setup. All right, let's answer some questions here. Welcome everybody on this Tuesday evening. Everybody like and subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any questions, I will answer them. If you don't, well, then we'll wrap this up a little bit early and we'll make this a quicker video. Quinn Price, usual viewer, steps in. When the heat is on, old habits come up. Yes, we'll see if he can adjust under game conditions. Exactly. I think Trey will improve game to game, just as he did last year, better reads, improved accuracy, etc. That's all something I covered in a 10-part series, breaking down the all-22 film of Trey Lance's 10 quarters of play in 2021. He was indeed on an upward trajectory. I don't know if we saw too many different, improvements as far as release time and all that, because you don't make those kind of fixes in season. But it is something that we've seen here in the first practice, and we will see when the 49ers we will see when the 49ers take the field and Trey Lance actually plays against the liver defense to see if he's actually ported over some of those improvements into actual game time. Tomorrow, the practice for the 49ers is at 12:20. The press conferences will be after practice, so around 1:30. I'll have all the updates for you there. Why do so many of the media hate on Lance? That's a big question to me. I have no clue. I do have a clue. I've never obviously hated on Trey Lance. I've been one of the biggest guys. I don't want to say proponent because I'm staying neutral here, but I think I get why the 49ers really like Trey Lance, and I get the vision, right? And I've been trying to cover that and hammer home why the 49ers really like Trey Lance. The reason why people are so negative about him so prematurely, I think, is because Trey Lance's name moves the needle. You put your content up there on the internet, and if Trey Lance's name is in the title or if his name is in the tweet, it's going to generate more traction. So if you want more clicks for your Twitter or for YouTube or for your Instagram, you'll put Trey Lance's name in there, and you don't care if whatever you put next to it is true because the clicks feel good. So I think that's why Trey Lance has been a lightning rod in that regard. The truth is that we don't have enough data to make a firm, conclusive judgment on how he's going to be. We can just actually, smartly analyze the small things that we actually have data for, like what we're doing today. Is Trey trying to fix the wobble for a tighter spiral? Yes, and I would think the spiral is about how the ball comes off your fingers, right? So I think the fact that his finger's not crooked this year, since that's healed up from last year, I think we'll see a little bit less of a wobble. So I didn't see too much of a wobble as he was throwing at practice last week. Ken H. asks, what do you think Jennings' role is going to be with the bigger frame he has? I'm reading McLeod is actually doing pretty well in the slot. Well, I mean, again, it's tough to say who's doing well in the slot and who's not. They haven't played 11-on-11 stuff. But Jennings and McLeod obviously are two different players because of that frame. Jennings is going to be the blocking kind of mauler, physical nasty there. But Jennings can also line up far outside. We saw him line up far outside against the Bengals in that epic game last year in Week 14. Made a big catch in overtime from Jimmy Garoppolo there in one-on-one coverage on the sideline. Juwan Jennings is a complete receiver, so he can be your big slot. He can line up outside. He could catch some jump balls for you and smaller cornerbacks. Ray McLeod's going to be more of a gadget weapon, right? So he will line up in the slot. You can line up out wide. You could run a reverse to him. A lot of special teams usage, I think, is in the future for Ray McLeod. So these are two different players, and both will have their predefined, carved-out roles in the 49ers offense. Joel Thompson, do you think the tighter throwing motion will translate to better accuracy in the short and intermediate game? Absolutely. If the throwing motion is tighter, there are less variables, right? So if there are less variables to go wrong, then you're going to have more consistency as far as accuracy. So Garoppolo was always a good short to intermediate thrower because he had the tight motion. The variables were non-existent, essentially. He threw one way in that short period of time, and that one way was usually going to be accurate from Jimmy Garoppolo. The interceptions underneath were more of a decision-making issue than an arm accuracy issue. And when Garoppolo started missing high, it would generally be on some of those throws that were a little bit further downfield when the release couldn't be that bullet quick release. When you added a little bit more to the motion, that's when you add more variables and more stuff can go wrong. Your gut feeling about if Mack and Tart return. Well, Tart, that's a matter of the 49ers call if they decide to re-sign him. And I think the 49ers are going to wait throughout this, OTA period to see exactly how they feel about the safety position. And Alex Mack, that's up to him. He has to decide whether or not to retire. Now, tomorrow's a big day. It's May 31st, so we're only a few hours away from June 1st. I posted another video while I was grilling, a little short video here a little while ago. On June 1st, if you cut a guy or if somebody retires, everybody has a dead money cap hit, right? If there's money that's been paid to them but hasn't hit the cap yet. But on June 1st, half of the dead money cap hit can be pushed forward into 2023. So, for example, if the 49ers cut D Ford right now, as we speak, it would be more expensive to cut him than to keep him on the 2022 cap. But because they can shift $8 million to their 2023 cap, starting tomorrow, starting on June 1st, if they release D Ford, they can actually save money by releasing D Ford, like $1.2 million starting tomorrow. Same deal with Alex Mack. They could save money at any time if he retires, but they could save more if he retires on June 1st and that money's pushed back. So look out tomorrow. It might be an inflection point I'm not saying something will necessarily happen tomorrow, but it's an inflection point where something can happen. Because if Mac was going to retire, we did not expect it to happen before June 1st, but tomorrow is June 1st. Brian S. asks, what percentage of plays do you think will be runs versus passes this season? Ooh, that's a good question. The 49ers are generally what, 52-48 run, I think. I think that's what the division was here over the past couple of years. Probably going to be similar. I don't see them trying to start to air it out 40 times a game with Trey Lance, an inexperienced quarterback. That Shanahan is Shanahan. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Shanahan wants to establish that run game, right? And given the state of the 49ers offensive line, until they prove they can pass protect at a level where the QB can be thrown 30 plus times a game, I think that you're going to be a run-first football team for the 49ers. And, that's a sign of a team that's winning, too. They're running more than they're passing. That means they're ahead in games, or at least controlling the tempo of games, which means that Shanahan can dictate his flow on the ground. Ken H. says, if it comes down to having to choose between Greenlaw and Alshire, I think it's a pretty good problem to have, but a difficult choice nonetheless. Might come down to that, might not. They're both going to be unrestricted free agents next offseason. It's a problem the 49ers don't have to worry about quite yet. Randall Riley, I would expect a higher run percentage early in the season, given Trey some time to get his feet wet. Yes, but it's also that Shanahan wants to run, right? Even if the quarterback's really experienced, like Garoppolo in 2019, if they can run the ball down teams' throats, right, like they did against the Packers in that NFC title game, they're going to do it. Because that allows Shanahan to better control game flow, better control time of possession, keep his defense fresh, unleash the hounds on the defensive line. I mean, it's all a domino effect. It's complementary football. So, yeah, I mean, you could help out the QB a little bit by running a little bit more, but you're just helping out the team as a whole if you can control the game on the ground. It's a much more sustainable way of winning, and that's where Shanahan's trying to zag while the rest of the league is zinging. Is zigging, not zinging. Zag while the rest of the league is zigging. David, is Trey trading quickness for power in his throws? I think most quarterbacks would trade quickness for power in their throws. On those short throws, I mean, there's only a finite amount of power that you're going to get that's going to move the needle in a tangible way. There is, it's a cost benefit, right? You add more mustard to the throw with a bigger windup, but your release is slower, so the defensive back has a chance to jump the ball, or a pass rusher like Aaron Donald has an extra split second to knock the ball out of the QB's hands. So it's important to maximize both, right? To find the happy zone between quick release and mustard on the throw, but you can't, just completely lose one of those at the expense of the other. And I think watching Lance in the short game last year, the release needed to be quicker, even if a little bit of mustard comes off the throw. It's going to allow him to better execute the nuances of Kyle Shanahan's short game. Hi, David. Do you think this is the deepest wide receiver group and deepest running back group you've seen? I don't know if it's the deepest wide receiver group. I mean, the 49ers at this point in that receiver room, I like the top 4, top 5 guys, but I don't know, like 1 through 6. I don't know who's the sixth guy is going to be. So it's a good-looking receiver room, right? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Ray McLeod, Danny Gray. But Danny Gray hasn't proven himself yet. Who's that number 5, number 6 guy going to be? Is it going to be Malik Turner? Does a guy like Tay Martin make the team, undrafted free agent, Taser Mack? I don't know. So the receiver room looks solid to me. I think it's still more top-heavy right now until guys number 5 and 6 prove themselves. As far as the running back position goes, yeah, they're deep, but we know the depth can vanish just like a snap of a finger in a poof, like in an instant in that running back room, just how it works with 49ers. I will say that it's a bigger running back room. They've got 2 dudes there that are 220 plus. Most everybody in that room is 210 plus. The exception really is Jermichael Hasty, so maybe that will allow the 49ers running back room to be a little bit more durable. All right, if you're just heading in, like the channel, subscribe to the channel. Big piece on Brian Fleury coming out tomorrow, 49ers tight ends coach, so be ready for that on The Athletic. And I will answer one more question from Squishy Banana. How concerned are you with the offensive line? The offensive line is always a concern for the 49ers. They haven't been good in pass protection in general over the past several seasons, really in the entire Shanahan era. They've got a lot of new faces. And you're just going to have to hold your breath once week 1 hits. How is Aaron Banks going to take over that left guard spot? What is Alex Mack's decision going to be? Is Mike McGlinchey going to come back fully healthy and, hit the same stride that he had pre-injury last season? How's that right guard situation going to look? It's a concern. It's really important. We shouldn't ignore it. So that's all I have to say. We'll wait and see. The 49ers did make some acquisitions, did make some additions this offseason, so we'll see if those end up working here. Adam Mann is very concerned with the right side of the O-line. Right here, Ken H. What does the salary cap jump to next year? Speaking in the manner of Ayuk having a breakout year, will the 49ers be able to keep both him and, I guess, Deebo Samuel for a few years? Yeah, but the salary cap is expected to inflate beyond what salaries will inflate at because of the new TV deal. And that's really going to start kicking in next year. The NFL is set for over $100 billion in new revenue from this new TV deal that kicks in 2023. So we're expecting cap growth of like 8 or 9% per season. So that's going to be big. It's going to help the 49ers out a lot. We'll cross the Ayuk bridge when we get to it. But if he does have a big season and he is set to get paid, we'll see if the 49ers can fit that in. The good news is that cap is rising as that is working out. So we'll see how that works out. I really don't know what the cap is going to be next year. We are entering the Wild West. There is a lot of unpredictability. So you just have to kind of hold your breath if you're a 49ers fan. And you also have to, hope that you do encounter that problem. If you do have the problem of, oh boy, do I pay Brandon Ayuk or not? That means that Brandon Ayuk has had a good year. And if Brandon Ayuk has had a good year, you've probably won a lot of games in 2022. So when it comes time to pay players, the 49ers have run into this issue over and over again. And that's, very correlated with the fact that they've done a lot of winning because your draft picks that work out get paid and draft picks that work out lead to wins. So they would very much like to face the problem of Brandon Ayuk needing to be paid next off season. All right, cool. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Those of you just coming in, we took a look at Trey Lance's throwing motion and release time. The x-axis on this graph is what you should pay most attention to because it's seen the most market change. The release definitely has been quicker for Trey Lance. So you could see that right there. I explained it at the start. So those of you who are just coming in right now, be sure to rewind, check out the whole thing. Also put some Trey Lance video in from practice. And I'm going to have way more video for you guys coming from the practice tomorrow on Wednesday. So be sure to check that out. And hell yeah, let's blow this video up. Hit that like button. I like what Mike is saying. Hit the like button, subscribe. Let's blow the video up. Your help would be very appreciated. All right, guys, everybody take care. More content coming really soon with that Brian Fleury article up on The Athletic. So I'll have you subscribe there as well. Everybody have a great night. Take care.